welcome back. This is our 30th show slash episode of Three Old Friends, The Music Never Ends. I'm Mike, and with me are Jose and Dave. And so this time around, 30, wow. Here, this time around, we looked at this year, 50 years ago, or 50 years ago right now, 1974. So all recordings that came out in that year, and not all hits. I wasn't going for that, at least with my stuff, but songs that meant something to us or whatever. So we'll get into that. I was 9. How old were you guys in 74?
9.
Both you 9. All right.
9.
Yeah, 9. So I'll just jump right into it. I started out with a song I didn't know back then. Robin Trower, Day of the Eagle. And then Jose continued with UFO, Doctor Doctor, which I also didn't know back then. And Already Gone was Dave for our third song. So I'll just get into mine real quick. Robin Trower, when I first heard his music was just as a solo artist, and he put out this record, Bridge of Sighs, and I got into it in like the mid late-ish 80s, and it's just a phenomenal album. And this song in particular, Day of the Eagle, it's really rocking right out the gate. It's first song on the album, and it's one thing that I noticed, I won't go into the whole thing too much, but one thing I noticed was, to me, it sounds a lot like it's influenced by Jimi Hendrix. I mean, if you kind of listen to it, there's a lot of that kind of guitar sound. I mean, not all the pyrotechnics, all the crazy stuff, but yeah. So make sure. Okay, we're good. I went on to like his music. I got into Procol Harum, and it's really hard for me to hear him in that. I mean, this guy doing this music in that. So yeah, guys, let's see, I guess, Jose, you were next on the playlist. You want to talk about that and yours, and then go forward?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. My cord is a little messed up. I hope I don't run out of juice here. So sorry about that. If I do, I'll alert you guys. Yeah, the first 3 songs. Now they're all really good. Dave the Eagle, I've never heard of. I didn't hear. I've obviously heard of Robin Trower, but he wasn't in my universe back then, or really now. So it's kind of nice. And then I followed with Doctor Doctor by UFO. I like UFO a lot. They're one of those bands that never really got the up over the top. They've had some hits here and there. And of course, the Eagles Already Gone. But what I really liked about the 3 songs is they're all dealing with the same subject. If you're reading Dave the Eagle about a lost relationship, and all 3 of these songs. Now I'm going to go off on a little tangent here and just say, and bear with me, I've been reading my Stephen King book, The Gunslinger, and he talks a lot about this thing. These people are all traveling. There's 7 books, so it's extremely long. I've only finished 4 of them. They're very long books. Anyway, at the heart of the matter is this thing that he calls a ka, which is this symbiotic relationship with all the characters that are traveling with them. And it seems crazy, only because I read it, that we all have picked all these songs and they all have a similar vibe to them. They all have a similar theme to them, which kind of cracked me up. So I thought that worked out really well. This is kind of the age of the beginning of kind of leaving the 60s into the 70s, kind of the hard rock era with Robin Trower, and then UFO, and then the Eagles are about to make breakthroughs. So I thought it was just a great combination of 3 songs.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. I think it's some kind of you mentioned symbiotic relationships or whatever, but sometimes I think it's just because we're just 3 old friends, and we're kind of getting in this groove. I mean, we've kind of figured this thing out for whatever reason, and I think our song choices, they seem to flow together. They always seem to have good. The themes are working good. Going back to 1974, I guarantee you on this playlist, there's only a couple of songs that I would have even listened to at that time, being a 9-year-old kid, mainly AM radio at the time, maybe just starting to get into FM, but not some of this hard rock. It was later on. Robin Trower, I wasn't really that familiar with it, probably until he was, and I won't say he was washed up at that time, but not till the early to mid '80s, right, where he would be the third act for somebody opening up, for one of the bigger name bands. That's where we would see him, but still talented nonetheless. UFO, I did see, I think, in concert once. Can't remember who they opened up for either, but liked a few of their songs. But again, the vibe of both those songs were just classic early '70s rock. Probably could have gone with so many things at that point, and we'll talk about it later as we get into the playlist, because we're going to be like, as Mike said, these weren't necessarily hit songs, but also there were a lot of first-year artists where they had their debut albums, and we whiffed on all of them, right? I mean, there's Rush, there's Kiss, there's some of those that were their first albums, and it's like, nah, we didn't choose anything off that. Now, it was their first albums, and there wasn't a lot of great songs on some of those either, but we probably could have done that. After you guys went with those first two songs, I was hard pressed to find an upbeat, like a real rock kind of song. Thought I was going to go with maybe a Queen or something like that, but then went with the Eagles tune "Already Gone," and I thought it stair-stepped down pretty good from a little bit of the rock to more of a mid-tempo rock kind of thing. So I did that again. That one wasn't written by Glenn Frey and Don Henley. That was somebody else that wrote that song, but it still became one of their more popular songs off that 1974 "On the Border" album for the Eagles, which really, I think, is what launched them. That's when they really started hitting it big in '74, '75. So anyway, I thought the first three songs were all good classic rock songs that set the tone real well.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, just going backwards, "Already Gone," who doesn't know that song? I've heard it many times, and it's one of their, standby, tried and true, good songs, that it was a hit for them, and rightly so. And they were really becoming what they would ultimately be at that point. They were really starting to get their sound. I had that not at the time, but years later, I got the cassette of that, like in the early '80s, and had some other that "On the Border," and "Song on the Border" was a contender for me to put on as well, but didn't do it this time. And then oh my gosh, let's see here. "Doctor Doctor" by UFO. I have to plead ignorance. I don't really know a lot about them. A lot of my friends were actually listening to them in the '80s, kind of starting to get into, they were still around, I guess.
They're still around now.
Yeah, oh yeah. But I just never I wasn't really into the some metal, but like I liked Black Sabbath and I liked AC/DC, but I was very selective. What's it? Deep Purple. I didn't give it a wide enough listen, but this one, what really struck me, well, you can really hear in this sound many of the bands that they clearly influenced later. A lot, I won't even try to name them, but a lot of bands that rose to prominence in the '80s and '90s. And then if I'm correct, the guitarist in this band for a short time was in the Scorpions.
Yeah, Michael Schenker.
Right. And yeah, I'm sure I should just be like knowing that name, and I've heard the name, but he didn't stay with them. But you can hear that sound in his guitar playing, definitely. So I thought that was really interesting. Scorpions, I should have mentioned, that's one that I kind of liked back in the day too. So I went on to let's see, '74, "Motherless Children" by Clapton, which again, a song I didn't know back then, but I got into later. "Dark Horse" by George Harrison, and "As the Raven Flies" by Dan Fogelberg. my song, Motherless Children. It's a was it Willie Dixon, a Blind Willie Johnson song. It's an old blues song. And if you've heard the original, this doesn't really sound a lot like it. The words are similar, and they've used this song has been covered by numerous people, but he added some really upbeat guitar playing, clearly Clapton, in this certain period. This album 461, is it 451? 461 Ocean Boulevard. I love that album back to front. It's still one of my favorite albums. I mean, he's done stuff that, like Layla, that, rises above, but this is a really good album. And I think it was a time when he was going through some real problems with addiction. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah. So one other thing I'll say about this song, I don't know if you guys remember back in maybe it was the 80s, when HBO was still kind of a newer thing. They had a program called Not Necessarily the News, and it was a comedy show, and it was funny. It was kind of offbeat, but they tried to make it like a news broadcast. Well, they used this as their theme song, just the instrumental part, that slide guitar and everything at the beginning. So I always think of that when I hear it. But boy, there were some other songs on that album I could have just as easily picked. So you had, let's see, you had Dark Horse, which is another one I love, Jose. But why'd you pick that one?
Well, yeah, first of all, yeah, Dark Horse, because of you, really, and I'll throw that out. I'll just say that I wasn't on the George Harrison bandwagon very much until I met you. You had the Somewhere in Time. I know you had that album. You had the Bangladesh album, and when you had that, I was like, oh man, I had really been missing out. I'd known my Paul McCartney and I'd known my John Lennon, but I didn't know my George Harrison, and actually till I met you. And this song obviously was on one of our tapes beforehand, back in the day. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I picked it. Plus, I thought it went well with Eric Clapton. They've had their fair share of relationship, and of course, let's not forget Dave's as the Raven flies, Dan Fogelberg. Another classic song. And one of the reasons I know Dan Fogelberg is because of Dave. I mean, it's just one of those things. So I thought that was a good choice of all three songs. Motherless Children. It's my favorite era, Eric Clapton, 74, 75. Yeah, he had his issues, but man, he put out some great music. So take that for what it's worth. In reading his biography, yeah, you learned a lot of that. It's like, it's more amazing that he could even put that stuff out. But I just thought it was a combination of the great three songs. And as the Raven flies, I hadn't heard that as much. I just bought that cassette for $2 for his greatest hits, and man, I'm really getting into it. So all three songs were really excellent.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the combination of songs and how they fit and all that kind of thing. These I consider these three songs to be sort of not as hard rocking as the first three. They're more mid-tempo kind of songs, but all three are beautiful in their own way. I was not familiar with maybe I'd heard the Clapton song or whatever. I didn't own that album back in the day, but when you listen to the lyrics of it and he talks about motherless children, what an impactful song it really is. I mean, if you think about, he really gets into, how hard that must be for them, and that even that fathers and sisters really, they can do what they can do, but they can't take the place of a mother. And growing up, I can't imagine not having my mom, or growing up without a mother, and how difficult that would have been, and how my life would have just been a lot different, I think, than that. And so again, for him to take on that subject and write such a beautiful song is a credit to how great he is. The George Harrison, wasn't familiar with this song either. Thought it had it's just a nice song. I don't think there's anything wonderful, or it's not like, oh, this is his best song ever kind of thing, but it showcases just how good of an artist he was as well. And as Jose said, there's probably a lot of George Harrison that I didn't get into or that didn't listen to. I had some of his albums and things, but I wasn't familiar with this song. at all. So this was kind of fresh and new to me listening to it. I listened to it probably 3 or 4 times since we put it on the playlist. And then again, you know, I'm a Dan Fogelberg big fan. You know, it's kind of a go-to thing for me. So when I was researching a little bit, I said, let me look at some of the artists that I really like and go back and let's see what they were producing in 1974. And as soon as I saw Souvenirs, I went, oh man, it's probably my favorite Dan Fogelberg album, even though it was one of his early ones. I did read that it was produced by none other than Joe Walsh. So Joe Walsh helped produce the album. He wasn't in the Eagles at the time. I don't believe, right? He joined a few years later. Couple years later. But again, in 1974, I wasn't listening to this music, Dan Fogelberg. I discovered Dan Fogelberg later on in my listening days. But this is one that cover to cover, this album is just a beauty all the way through. So there were a lot of songs that I could have put on this one. In fact, I have put on some of these, or at least one of these, on another one. There's a Place in the World for a Gambler is on that album, and I used the live version of it in one of our earlier podcasts and playlists that we did. So again, big fan of this album, and again, I think all 3 of these songs being just in that wheelhouse of a mid-tempo type of a song took it down from the hard rock to the medium rock. And anyway, I thought it was a good 3 choices.
Yeah, I agree. Something I forgot to mention about Motherless Children, the original recording, again, it's Blind Willie Johnson. He recorded that in Dallas, back in the day. I think probably it was Columbia Records. It might have been in the Deep Ellum area, because I know there was a lot of blues stuff going on there then. But anyway, if anybody knows Dallas, that's I guess, well, in the 80s it became kind of a trendy place. I don't know if it still is. They also had Theater Gallery there, which is a punk club back in the day. Anyway, I digress.
You go down to Deep Ellum, put your money in your shoes. Come on, Grateful Dead, sing about it.
There you go. Yeah. So and then I thought it was a good choice. Of course, I love Dark Horse. I do remember that from being a kid because my mom had that record, and so she played it a lot. But you know, this is coming right after Clapton. Those 2 were really good friends for a long time, and then a year or so before this stuff came out, I guess I don't know what year Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs came out, but they famously had a woman got between them. Clapton cheated or whatever.
Patty Boy.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Well,
Tongue tied there.
let me just interject. Interesting enough, Dark Horses, I did a little research. I did Dave research. Actually, Ronnie Woods had actually slept with his wife, and he had written about this as part of that. So it was weird, even though then, of course, George Harrison slept with Ronnie Wood's wife. It was all incestuous back then in the day. So I just thought I'd put that in there. It was weird. But Dark Horses is actually about everyone, you know, underestimating him and saying he wasn't up to the snuff as McCartney or Lennon, but shows, hey, don't underestimate me. Anyway, sorry about interrupting.
No, he did. And just to carry on that thought a second, he definitely did get underestimated and showed what he had going. Even when he was with the Beatles, he demoed for them several songs that became All Things Must Pass, that record, which is just a phenomenal record, and they all just kind of shot him down. So, but he showed them. He wrote some for Ringo too later. Anyway, and then As the Raven Flies, this one I didn't get into Fogelberg until the 80s, but this is one of the first ones of his I had. And there's so many songs on here I love. That's a great, if I could only get one of his records, it'd probably be that, or, you know, maybe Phoenix, but probably that one. It's just such a great record. So I had some Fogelberg on my list, but I'm glad you picked that one. So, so then we go on. I was kind of a little, you know, we had the Eagles and horses and ravens. So I was kind of running out of, oh, and the Eagles, the band, and Day of the Eagle. So I was kind of running out of, I didn't really have anything else on my list, animal related or bird related or whatever. So I just went with Steely Dan song, Parker's Band, followed by Jose with Skin It Back from Little Feat, and then the Prison Song by Graham Nash. Parker's Band is pretty much about Charlie Parker. I mean, it's not like a historical thing about him. It's just kind of an enjoyment of his music. Some heroin references in there, which I guess would have been appropriate for Parker's drug use. But then the saxophone and the arrangement of the song reminds me a lot of Charlie Parker, whose music I love. Although I didn't know it, I knew the song way before. I didn't even know who this is about back in the day when I listened to it. Only in college did I start getting into Charlie Parker. Yeah, so that's off Pretzel Logic. I've been accused of being partial to Royal Scam, which guilty as charged, but there's other albums that I love their stuff too. So yeah, and then you went on with Skin It Back by Little Feat, Jose.
Yeah, no, this is where the playlist kind of shows how diverse 74 really was, because there's a lot of, we go from a lot of songs that are kind of all in the same blend to all of a sudden it goes to a whole different level, so to speak. And no, I always enjoy Steely Dan, only because it has that, it is different. It's not, you don't hear anything like that in 74. And I thought they were really bringing it, and that song is really good, especially the saxophone at the end. I didn't know what the song was about. I've rarely heard the song. I didn't have Pretzel Logic, so I probably rarely listened to it. I went with Skin It Back by Little Feat. I just want to put a Little Feat song on there because I think they're kind of underrated, and I think they kind of got lost in the whole, because I think they were tabbed as Southern rock, but man, we didn't put any Lynyrd Skynyrd on there. And in 74, Lynyrd Skynyrd had just put out an album and that was huge. Allman Brothers were huge back in 74. So Little Feat kind of takes a back seat, so to speak, to it. And then, so I wanted to put a little song, about them. It's not their most famous song, obviously, even on that album, Feet Still Fail Me Now is the album. So I thought I'd just give them a little love. And then Prison Song, I know Prison Song and I only know Prison Song not because it's on the album, but because I listened to a lot of Crosby, Stills and Nash Young live, and in 74 they had that, I wouldn't call it disastrous tour, but it was a tour that was marred. But Graham Nash would sing this song on there. And in doing my research, and I don't want to steal any of Dave's thunder, I know it's a song about him, and his dad had to spend a year in prison because, and I didn't know this beforehand, that he had to spend a year in prison because he was because Graham Nash bought something from somebody and then his dad had it. So they put his dad in jail for a year, which is crazy. So, but obviously Graham Nash is Graham Nash, and I love Graham Nash. So I thought, again, 3 varied songs, but 3 really great songs and impactful songs.
Yeah, so let's start with the Steely Dan. I mean, Mike keeps going to the Steely Dan, which I don't. It's good. Keep going. You give me good songs with Steely Dan. But sometimes I just wish that when we get to that point, you pick the song maybe that everyone knows, which is fine. I've been exposed to a lot of the Steely Dan that I didn't know, but I had on my list, and I was going to play a Steely Dan song. And I was going to do Ricky Don't Lose That Number. Now, I know that's probably one of their more popular songs. It's one that everyone knows. It's off this album. It's probably the most well-known song off this album, the one that charted and everything and went up the charts. But I didn't remember Parker's Band. I probably had this album and I listened to it, but I knew this song, and Any Major Dude will tell you is another one on this one on Pretzel Logic. Said great tunes. So I applaud you for continuing to go with the Steely Dan. I keep telling Jose and you, it's like at some point I'm going to beat you to the Genesis and to the Steely Dan maybe at some point. And I'm just gonna have to start off when I have the first song on the next playlist or whatever. I'm just gonna have to go there, Probably won't be going to Little Feat anytime soon, but I do remember them back in the day a little bit, and the good Southern rock band, and really, I found myself liking this song a lot on the playlist as I listened to it more and more. I was like, man, this is a good jam. It's a good tune. Um, but again, I wasn't familiar with it at all. And then, at first I wasn't really planning to do the Graham Nash. I don't know why that the song or that album popped into my head, but I went ahead and went with it. And I think what was cool is that after the stuff in Steely Dan and the saxophones, and then the Little Feat, and then just to start off with that harmonica with Graham Nash, I think just kind of set a cool tone for the playlist at that point. Maybe it wasn't expected. It just boom out of nowhere. When you hear that harmonica, I mean, there's a lot of great harmonica players. We know you're going to hear Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen and others where you go, oh yeah, I definitely recognize that. But Graham Nash is also one where he uses a lot of harmonica in his songs. So anyway, that's all I have with that.
Yeah, Ricky, don't lose that number. Probably not a big chance I'll ever put that on a playlist.
Oh.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Just one of those songs that it was just played a lot, and in retrospect, I've come to appreciate it more, but it's just not, I don't know. That's just my taste. And honestly, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mike and I, we were talking about this before Dave came on. Dave, you have the only 2 songs that were like in the top 10
I know.
of the 1974. So it just goes to show you that, yeah, I think Mike and I are ones that hit the hits, so to speak. So
Yeah, and
there's plenty of time for the hits. We get to explore the B tracks and the deep tracks.
Yeah, and that's really kind of what I was going for, either songs that really resonated for me at 9 years old, or that later on that really kind of stood out on those records for me. And again, that I don't want to shoot that song down, or your opinion. It's a very popular song, so just wasn't my thing. And then we went on to Skin It Back. And, I knew this song a little bit. I like Little Feat a lot, at least during the Lowell George years. My main introduction and probably most of my knowledge of their music came from their live album, Waiting for Columbus. I just somebody lent me a tape or something, and I listened to it, and I was just blown away. That is a great live album. It's in my opinion, it's one of the best. But I think it had this song on it. I've definitely heard this song before. And one thing, for anybody who doesn't know much about Lowell George, he was their singer, mostly the singer, and then he wrote a lot of their songs. He also, was it Shakedown Street that he produced?
Yeah.
He produced other people, but he wasn't with us very long. He lived to excess, and I'm laughing at that, but it was like excess. And he died. I think he died of a heart attack. But yeah, it was a tragic loss for music, because who knows where he would have gone, more production. But this song has a line in it when, I had never looked at the lyrics before until you played this. And it just really is like, wow, given what happened in his life. It's just one little part here. It's those rock and roll hours, early graves without flowers. It's like, you're living that crazy lifestyle, burning people along the way, and you're not going to be around very long, and you're not going to have a lot of people mourning you necessarily. So I thought that was kind of a sad line, and little prescient on his part. I don't know if he knew where he was going, but anyway.
Yeah, well, Skin It Back means, and I didn't know this even till now, is Skin It Back means rolling up your sleeves and getting down to business. I didn't know that initially. And I will say, Dave, that you did own one of Little Feat. I think it was one of our Apple collection things. That's how we ended up with the Little Feat album. I think it was Waiting for Columbus, which, by the way, Fish did as a cover of that whole album. So that's how I really know a lot about Little Feat as well. Sorry about that. Full disclosure.
No, go for it. That's why we're here. And then let's see, Prison Song. I'll go. Well, I did not know anything. I knew, of course, I knew Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Crosby and Nash. You know, the song "Immigration Man." It's like I knew a lot of the stuff that he was involved in, the Hollies, earlier on. But I had never really listened to much of his solo albums, and until you came along, Dave, and you put a couple of songs, I think, off of. Well, you played you on some of the tapes. You put a few, but one thing I think off Wild Tales, and I can't remember what it was. But this song, it's an interesting message. You know, those harsh penalties, do they really help the situation? I don't know. I won't take a side on it, but you can probably tell how I feel by the way I'm talking. But anyway, that aside, I really thought after that I had a song. Well, I like the song anyway. It's a very good song, well written. And then I was like, when you play that, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do next. It was on my list. Was it on? Yeah, it was on my list. Okay, so Leonard Cohen, "A Singer Must Die," and then Jose did "Counting Out Time" by Genesis, and "Cats in the Cradle," Dave by oh my gosh, I've got to look at it here. Harry Chapin. I mean, how could I not remember that? I'm sorry, folks. It's going to keep happening. Just roll with it. So yeah, "Singer Must Die," Leonard Cohen. It's funny because Jose, a few playlists ago, I don't remember exactly how many, you put a song for the same album on, the war song. "There Is a War"
Very
is off
cool.
this record. And this is kind of not old Leonard Cohen. I mean, by his timeline musically, but it was older, much older, and he was kind of getting into his bringing more instruments and stuff in. But I've always liked this song. It's just so severe, you know. He's just like so, just like not deadpan voice, but kind of close to that, and it's just like it's sarcasm. It just drips with sarcasm. This guy, he's on trial, I guess, for being a musician or poet or something, and saying the wrong thing and displeasing the state. And he clearly knows that whatever happens, they've already decided what they're going to do. And so he just answers with, sarcasm, like, "Oh yes, your vision was right, my vision was wrong," and all kinds of things like that. So I thought that would, the state again, on a little guy, one of the people, thought that was a good song to follow with. And then what do you have to say, Jose?
Well, okay. Let me first go with Leonard Cohen. I don't know if that really clicked with me. I think the lyrics are great, and I think he was writing about it in some point about Nixon, and it was a whole situation going on there. You know, some people interpret it that way, and about how the system and how it's good. But as a playlist, I don't know. Sometimes it's hit or miss with me with Leonard Cohen, his voice, and especially it's kind of jarring in this playlist. Not to say that's a bad thing. It's just to say that, I don't know, for some reason it didn't click with me as much as other songs. But again, that doesn't mean as I've listened to it more and more, I understand where he's coming from, and and his style. It's not my style right now. It's not my style. I listen to it, like you said. I put on other Leonard Cohen songs. I think he obviously writes great lyrics. So I just wanted to throw that out there again. As I always listen to a lot of these playlists, a lot of these songs grow on you after the fact, and I think that's one of them. I went with "Counting Out Time," even though it wasn't my initial choice. My initial choice was "In the Cage," but of course, as Dave vetoed me because he has that power.
We'd used it already.
There you go. Because it was used in an older one, but we did talk about it. So I concede, and I was in the wrong. So I went. And I did leave it open for anyone. I mean, this is what the third or fourth song of I thought for sure someone would like sneak up and grab it because it is my favorite album of all time. And so I just went with "Counting Out Time," which kind of like the Leonard Cohen, it's kind of out of place in this whole scenario. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's really out of place. Now, if we would have put it under one of Dave's other songs, it might have been even a little more awkward with his last one. But I love the song. I think it's a clever song. A lot of innuendo, obviously, a lot of, that kind of awkwardness that a lot of guys have gone through, thinking that you can do this by the book. If you know the song, you know the song. And then, of course, Dave went with Cats in the Cradle, which I say everybody, a lot of people know. And every time you hear it, it makes an impact because we've all kind of been there. We all have sons. We may not live in that same existence, but we all know the feeling of being a dad and sometimes not having the time because we get too busy with our other lives. And then your son's there. And then, of course, now we have sons that have grown up that, of course, my son, he lives in Ohio and I live here. So, yeah, but it's always hard hitting. And that's one of the hits, one of the top 10 that Dave went with. And give Dave credit, it always makes an impact. The hits sometimes are the hits for a reason, and that's one of them. And so, again, this whole, like the other three, again, these three again shows how different 74 really was. For Genesis, this was almost the beginning of the end because Peter Gabriel's was leaving. Leonard Cohen has his own style. And then Cats in the Cradle with Harry Chapin. Of course, Harry Chapin went on to write a lot of other great songs, but still, three interesting songs for sure.
Well, let's talk about Leonard Cohen for a minute. It's interesting that, I started compiling all the number of songs and the playlists and stuff that we've done, and we've actually went over 500 songs already. We're at 509. That's amazing in just a short time we've done this. But we also have to, we're looking at, how often are we using one artist and how many have made multiple playlists. And in this case, in the last 6 playlists, since you already mentioned it from number 25 when we did the war thing. So Jose used Leonard Cohen. And then on the Halloween one, I used Leonard Cohen. And now Mike on this one used Leonard Cohen. So we've all used Leonard Cohen within the last 6 playlists. That says something. That says we're influencing each other a little bit, that we're listening to it and going, hey, maybe I'll pick a song from that artist now. Right? I mean, so I like the fact that we're blending over and using other people's artists and listening to their music and saying, oh, I found this gem, or look at this one that I listened to, and we're putting them on. So we're not afraid to do that. I think that's a cool thing. But I will say with the Genesis and with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, I don't think I ever had the album, listened to it, a few times, and I know you guys are both huge on this. It's an epic masterpiece, all that kind of thing. However, out of our 509 songs, which is a lot, we have now used one song on every side of that double album. So there's four songs that we've used now. So I wasn't vetoing it necessarily in the cage, but then you went to another song that Counting Out Time, and kind of like Jose said, these songs, they're different. They're all different. And at first I'm like, oh, this is a cool little ditty, counting out time. And then it gets into it, I'm like, what's he talking about? Numbers and erogenous zones. And I got to 1 through 6, and I'm a young boy. And it went off the rails pretty quick on that. But it's a cool song. But like I said, I can't get a Genesis in edgewise with you two, so I'll have to figure out. Actually, I know when I'm going to do it. I haven't set up a theme yet for it, but that's just a spoiler alert. But when it's my turn to do a theme, I have a perfect theme, and then I have the song that I like from Genesis that will make that playlist. And then again, like we talked about Cats in the Cradle. Quick short story about Cats in the Cradle. So growing up, I was in choir in fifth grade, and then in middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and all the way through high school. And I think it was 7th grade was the first time, and I know it was, where we had a Pops concert, and you're allowed to maybe pick a song and then you could do a solo or sing something in front of the whole student body. And seventh grade, I would have been what? How old are we in seventh grade? 12 maybe, or
Well,
about
yeah.
12 or so. Yeah. So I chose as my first song ever to sing in public, "Cats in the Cradle." So this song holds a special place for me. I listened to it in the 70s. I did know the song. And as I went from 9-year-old to 10-year-old to 11-year-old, loving the song. And then when I got to 12 and they said, "Well, what song do you think you'd want to sing, Dave?" I'm like, "Cats in the Cradle." That's my song. That's the one I'm singing. And I did really well with it from what I remember and from what everybody told me, but I started to flub the lyrics on the second verse a little bit and had to catch myself. So even though my first performance was not flawless, I had to recover from a mistake in that. So anyway, it's always been a favorite song of mine, and I knew at some point I'd be able to get it onto a playlist. And when we picked 1974, I knew it would end up on the list.
Well, I'm sure that flaw made it all the more beautiful for everyone lucky enough there for the experience.
I'm trying to remember if I was at that concert, which I think I.
It was at Ed White Middle School, and
Nah, y'all, you did great, Dave.
I'm
Dave
I'm
always
sure
did
you
I
great.
think what I did, I actually remember I went, "My son turned 10 just the other day." And then I went back to the first verse and I said, "He came to the world in the usual way." And then I realized what I'd done and went la 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 for a minute. And
I think
Well,
I
that's-
vaguely remember something like that.
That's
But
interesting.
when you're in the seventh grade, everything is either magnified or overblown. But at least you didn't stop, and right, you just kept on moving. So I don't
You
think
couldn't have
most people
dragged
would have
me onto a
noticed.
stage in the seventh grade. I mean, I would not have made it partway through a line without just forgetting my place. That has remained consistent to this day. I may forget stuff more as an older person, but anyway, that's kudos to you, Dave. That I'll go backwards on this one because that song, that is one I clearly remember from back then, and I guess I'll get a little personal here. So the 74 was the year my parents divorced,
Me too.
and so that song and a lot of music from that year kind of is shaded by that. It was a hard time for the whole family, and I was old enough to see what was going on, and so this song was probably the one that really at the time, kind of just that was like, oh man, I can't listen to that song, and it stayed that way for many years. But now I've come to appreciate it for what it is. He was such a great songwriter, Harry Chapin, and he did take on, serious topics, and he didn't just try to write little happy songs. He took on the sorrow and the struggles that people have. And this one, it's about a son and a dad, and the dad not being there and stuff. So, take from that what you will. There's a lot of sides to those kind of stories, when parents split, but it definitely that resonated with me back then. Now I can listen to it, and I've gotten past that. And anyway, I won't go into that anymore, but I appreciate you putting it on there. I wouldn't have, probably just because of historical reasons, but I think it's a great song, and I'm glad it's on there. Let's see, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Counting Out Time. Okay, I have a couple things to say about this. First off, it's one of my favorite albums. I love that. I love every song, including this one. It's a comedic song, and then it's about, having intimate relations with someone is more than just the little parts of, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do here. It's like, it's a much bigger thing. And that's what this guy in the song is trying to do. It's like, okay, I read the manual, now I'm ready to go, and it doesn't work out for him so well. There's another song by Richard Thompson, very similar. And I was thinking with the songs, let's see, we had a Prison Song, and then The Singer Must Die, which is kind of sort of about jail. I was thinking when you were saying The Cage, that might have been what you were thinking of. Maybe not, but I was like, well, that makes
well.
sense. And then I'm like, okay, well, Counting Out Time, that could also be, you
Right,
know,
but it has nothing to do with that.
absolutely not. And,
Unfortunately.
and so all that said, I will just say that I would not have picked that song. There's, that year that came out, that would not be my top choice. But we've done so many over the years, like 4 now off this, and but that doesn't mean that it's not the right song for you. Um, the only other thing I'll say is, so I've been listening to my car's air conditioning is broken, and so I've been listening to this driving around the last week, and so it's turned up pretty loud. And I was in traffic the other day, and I'm in the middle of this song, stopped at a light. I'm like, oh crap. It's like it's not good driving around with the window down music. But whatever. So yeah, we go to the final 3. And so I was Wishing You Were Here, not to be confused with Wish You Were Here, by Chicago, with a little help from the Beach Boys or some of them. And then It Doesn't Matter Anymore by Linda Ronstadt, and The Streak by Ray Stevens. So we'll just work through these. We'll unpack these. So the first one, Wishing You Were Here, that's another one from back in that time period. I think it was the summer, maybe. I remember that song being on the radio. And it was also, again, it's kind of wistful, obviously from the title it is, um, and so it resonated with that. But there was something about it that, it's just like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Seinfeld episode about Witchy Woman, where it's like a character on there, like, here's a song, Witchy Woman, and he goes off into it affects him somehow. You'd have to see it to understand this, but that's kind of how it was with me. It's like every time the song would come on, I'd be like, not transfixed, but kind of, it would take me somewhere. And it's the Chicago, Terry Kath singing, who tragically died just a few years later. He sang a lot of their earlier songs that got a lot of airplay. You guys, I'm sure, know some of them. The only other guy sang as much as or more was Peter Cetera, who handled I don't know if it wasn't the chorus, it's like a bridge, I guess, in this, which reminded me a little bit. I'm not comparing it to a Beatles song. It reminded me a little bit of how they'd put things together. John and Paul would stick things together. I don't know if that was the process here. I know Pete Cetera wrote it, Peter Cetera. But yeah, and then the other thing about it, I mean, I just love this song. To this day, it still has that effect on me. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but one thing that also, the harmonies on there are 3 of the Beach Boys, not Mike Love or Brian Wilson, but the other 2 Wilson brothers and Al Jardine. And you can clearly hear, they're back there. And at that point in my life, I knew nothing about the Beach Boys, didn't have any interest. And this is kind of what started that monster in me. So yeah, there's that one.
I will
What do you
go
got?
back to what Dave says. I picked It Doesn't Matter Anymore, and Mike picked Wishing You Were Here, which were not the hits from these guys on those things.
Yeah.
With It Doesn't with Linda Ronstadt, it was Heart Like a Wheel. That was her breakthrough. And of course, You're No Good was the huge hit. And I loved that song when it came out. I mean, I will say, Mike, and I think you mentioned this when we were putting this together, that I wasn't a big Linda Ronstadt, even in the late 80s when we were making these things, and I might have made a, discouraging, but you come to realize we all make mistakes in our lives, and that's one of them. And when you really listen, and I went back and listened to the whole album because I was like, which song should I pick? And like Dave says, Mike and I just aren't the kind of guys who pick the hits, although sometimes we should, because You're No Good is one of those songs that lives forever and is always really good. But I went with It Doesn't Matter. She made it was all these cover songs that she sang on that, and it really broke through because because of her voice, really. So and then same with Chicago. I really never listened to this song, but I know all the other songs on that album, but I didn't listen to this as much. It's a beautiful song. Maybe I should have listened to it more, but yeah, you listen to more of the upbeat, the guitar solos, the horns and stuff. So, and we'll get to the streak. Let's save a little time for
We'll
all.
get there. We'll get there. Before we get to the streak, let me talk about these. So I had Cats in the Cradle, and then I didn't really realize this till I listened to the playlist a couple times. But he's longing for his dad, and then the dad longs for his son. And then so you putting on "Wishing You Were Here," it's a similar kind of a thing. It's got the lyrics in there. I'm missing you and wishing you were here, and then even to some degree, even it doesn't matter anymore. Does the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
There you go, baby. You left me here crying. I really miss. I guess it doesn't matter anymore. You're gone. And so all three of those kind of have that same sentiment. I like the Chicago song. I've always liked the song. It's where it starts going in. That's where Pete Cetera starts taking over in Chicago, and they start putting out power ballad after power ballad, hit song after hit song, because they had the formula for that. And this is just right when they started to do that in '74, and the next several years they filled the charts. Same thing like with the Linda Ronstadt thing. We know kind of how this was born out. I mean, what was it? Don Henley and Glenn Frey were playing backup for her, right, in her band, and they finally said, "Hey, we can do better than this. Let's form our own band, right? Let's break out and create our own thing." And she encouraged them really to do that and to go for it. So Linda Ronstadt was a huge part of the music scene, but also the Eagles' success in the early '70s. And yeah, we forget how great of an artist she really is. I wasn't familiar with this song either, but when I listened to it, I'm like, between "Wishing You Were Here" and then "It Doesn't Matter Anymore," those are probably my two in combination. Those two songs on the playlist, and I guess to brag, because "Cats in the Cradle" right before that. So those three were really, really good together, and I was really enjoying the vibe of the playlist. And then
Wait.
what
Wait,
I
wait,
was
wait.
thinking.
Wait. Sorry to interrupt. I'd like to say a little bit of Linda Ronstadt real quick.
Okay.
So just because I know we all really want to relish the streak.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go talk about the other ones, and then we'll get into the end.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It should have occurred to me that would be the best approach. So yeah, the Linda Ronstadt. I agree. I love her singing. I only knew a few of her songs, and "You're No Good." I completely agree. It's like kind of the same kind of deal back. It's just lasted. It still has this. I didn't know until years later that it was a cover, but this song too. It's I've heard it since more and more. I didn't listen, back in the day, I didn't really hear it as much on the radio, but it's a great song. Her voice is just wonderful. And hopefully we'll get some more of her stuff on. This is the second thing I think we've had her sing on. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it's a Buddy Holly song originally, and I can't believe I've never put a Buddy Holly song, I think, on any playlist of tape or electron, this or whatever. But I'm remiss, and I'll need to. He had some good ones. And this, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. It was actually the last thing I think he recorded, one of the last couple of things he recorded before that deadly plane crash, and then the single came out posthumously, and the flip side I think was "Raining in My Heart." I might be wrong, which, given the circumstances just before it was released, seems a very timely couple of song titles. But she does a wonderful. She slows it down, definitely, and gives it its own life through her eyes. So yeah, I appreciate that one too, Jose. And So what were you gonna say, Dave?
Let's tackle that streak.
So, okay, so obviously in 1974, as a 9-year-old kid, I didn't know what the heck streaking was or whatever, but I remember when this song came on the radio, I thought it was cute. I thought it was funny. And I listened to it a lot. It was on AM radio and it charted and it went up the charts. And Ray Stevens capitalized on that the whole thing real quickly. I guess pretty much streaking started. I was looking at on the web, and it was pretty much 1974 thing is when it really kind of started. People started imitating it and doing it on campuses at some of the colleges and stuff. So it started in Florida State University in January, and then Texas, Washington State, Maryland, University of Georgia, others. They just started becoming a thing across a lot of the college campuses at the time. All I could say is thank goodness I wasn't in college at the time, or whatever. But no, I don't know how and why this became such a popular thing. But even in some sporting events too, right? There were some sporting events that were, what the heck is going on? And somebody's running through the stadium buck naked. Anyway, I thought it was a cute song. I thought it may be a cute way to end it, which again, there were so many songs that we left off that would have went with the last 3 songs that we played that I could have put on, a Cat Stevens song, or James Taylor, or John Denver, or Elton John, all kinds of singer-songwriters that would have went really well at the end of this playlist. But nope, I said, let's just go ahead and put that song on, give us something interesting to talk about, which it is. And we'll leave it at that.
Well, behind the curtain, Mike and I were because we didn't do this. Mike and I were doing the video, and you were out doing what you were doing. And when you mentioned that, Mike and I were just, what the hell's going on? And initially we're like, what? This is crazy. We, like you said, there's 1,000 other songs that could easily be put on there. Having said that, we've discussed it more, and Mike will talk about as well. It was the 8th most popular song in 1974. He made a crap ton of money singing the song. And full disclosure, this was my first real album that I ever bought. Cost me $2.36 at the Woolworths. And Dave knows, remember the Walsham Elementary across the street was the Woolworth store. And I spent my whole $2.30 to buy this album and listen to it extensively. I didn't really know, like Dave said, I didn't know what streaking was or anything about it, but it was a fun song. And of course, you kind of knew, and you kind of, when you're 9 years old, you kind of like, you laugh because you think you know what's going on, but you really don't know what's going on. But I have to give you kudos, because it really is something that was part of 1974 and was a big part of it. And I told Mike another story, but we cannot discuss what the lyrics have said or didn't say at the very end there. But it makes you laugh, that's for sure.
You can, yeah. Once we get on camera, you can tell them. Sorry, folks. Just Anyway.
Well, something about Ethel. Something about Ethel.
Well,
Yeah.
What's the last line he says in that? Ethel, you shameless hussy.
Hussy. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
how can you interpret that?
All right.
I don't know. That she
I'll
ran
just say
off with,
something
she ran
about
off with the
Eth-
streaker. She
Right,
ran off
Ethel-
with him.
What? Ethel, you shave
All right,
that.
we'll listen to it together.
That's how we heard it. And so every time we heard that song, we sang that lyric.
Oh,
Yeah. Imagine that. As 9-year-old, when you're 9 and your brothers are 10 and 12-year-old, you initially thought, is that what he said? Because we didn't have a lyric sheet. We didn't have anything that said anything. So we would play that song and laugh out loud, because like, is he yelling at his Ethel about that? Oh my God, can he get away with that? It wasn't until I'm sure someone mentioned it to us, or like, yeah, that's not what that says. So anyway, I shouldn't be saying that, but yeah.
Well, I'd like
Listen
to.
to it. Try listening to it, because it's not very distinct when he says that. It's hard to hear that. But when you hear it, you hear it. And when we heard it, we heard something completely different.
I did not know this. I had not, I don't believe I heard it that way back in the day. If I did, I don't remember it now. However, once they said it to me and I was listening to it, I almost was falling out of my chair. And to this, I've heard it few more times and I listen to this and now it's like I hear that. So thanks,
Now it's
Jose. You ruined it for me. I
Ah,
can
the
never
dirty
listen to it
nine.
again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the song as 9-year-old Mike in 1974. That's an awesome song. I wouldn't have said awesome, but that's a great song. I love that song. Every time I came on the radio, I on the car, I would say, "Mom, no, turn it up, play the song." And I'm sure the other adults that would be in the car were so sick of that song. But I did back in the day. I thought it was great. That was a humorous highlight. And yes, I didn't quite get. You can figure out from the context of the song, but I was just like, "What is this a thing? What?" And then my mom graduated from college either that year or the next in Central Oklahoma. I forget what it's called now. It's like OCU Edmond, or it was Central State University. Anyway, and there was a streaker. And my grandmother and my granddad were there, and these country farm people and great people, but and so it was like, oh my goodness. And of course the crowd's going crazy, but even I could tell he was wearing a bodysuit, a flesh colored bodysuit. You can't. So anyway, yeah. Nowadays, it's not really on my playlist. I'll listen to American Top 40, the vintage stuff with Casey Kasem. And I heard the other day in 1974 actually came on, and a lot of these songs, and The Streak was on there. And Cats, I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but Cats in the Cradle, that was on there, but they would shorten songs for, I guess was it on AM? Maybe it was on AM, but they would shorten it for like the not soon to come album oriented rock length, so it'd be short poppy things. And so they had that song and they cut, I swear I heard this the other day, they cut the song right before the last verse. They cut out the whole part. The whole twist is like the son coming back and saying, "I'm sorry, Dad." Okay, there was the car keys part, but my boy grew up just like me. That whole thing was off of there. It's like, why were they? That's the point of the song, and that's what makes it so poignant. Anyway, The Streak. Yeah. So, and he got a lot of mileage off of that format, that type of song. He did like one about a Oak Lodge convention or something like that, and there were all kinds of songs that he did along those lines.
He's kind of the Weird Al, right?
Grandma got run over by a reindeer.
Yeah. He was kind of Weird Al, but not many people do novelty songs anymore like that, other than Weird Al, right? Is that?
There were a few of them in the 70s like that I liked in that time frame, and we'll have to find a place for some of those fun songs, because there's I probably have 4 or 5 other ones that are like that I listened to in that mid to late 70s that were kind of fun parody songs like that. One was called Junk Food Junkie. You remember that one? Love that song.
I actually, I kind of still, I like that one. Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road. I don't know if you guys know that one. We maybe should try to do a full-on novelty song. Might be hard to get all the way through. Maybe not, but
Dr. Demento made a living out of playing novelty.
Fish heads, right? Fish heads and stuff like that. Convoys and CB radios and all that.
Disco Duck.
Disco Duck.
Rick Dees. Yeah. Okay. Well, so Dave, you took the fire from us like a man. You withstood our scorn. So we all got to admit we listened to it back in the day, and actually, kudos to you for putting that on. It was definitely a part of our lives that year.
So what were some of the things that we talked about, some of the artists and stuff we may have missed, but I took a little notes about 1974, and there was a lot of stuff going on
Oh yeah.
that we probably should. Let me just hit a couple of highlights. I mentioned Kiss and Rush, right? It was their first album. Neil Peart was officially in Rush in 1974. But some
But
of the
he did.
first,
Yeah, but he didn't play on Working Man.
no, not on that one. It wasn't until the next album.
Yeah.
But they had got rid of what's the dude's name? John Rutsey said, you know, you're out, Neil, you're in.
Right.
Um, Queen played their first North American concert, opening for Mott the Hoople in Denver, Colorado.
And they actually put out 2 albums that year, Queen 2 and
And
Killer Queen or
uh,
Sheer Heart Attack or what is it?
Sheer Heart Attack, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I didn't even put on the Grateful Dead's Ship of Mars Hotel. Nothing off that, even though I should have. And in respect for Phil Lesh, but we'll get to him on, in memoriam. But yeah.
AC/DC had their first concert with Bon Scott. Didn't want to talk about what albums were going on, but that Bon Scott came onto the scene in 74 with AC/DC.
How about Bad Company?
Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joins Fleetwood Mac in 74.
Yeah, but they didn't put out an album.
No, I'm not saying they put out. I'm just saying
Yeah.
some rock history of what's happening here, leading into the next couple of years.
Oh yeah. Well, Bad Company, they had it. Diamond Dogs by David Bowie.
Yep, I had that one on the list.
Mike, who was thinking of this, but Frank Zappa, Don't Eat That Yellow Snow. So why we didn't put that one on? Obviously Neil Young had one. Traffic had an album. So yeah, there was a lot. So
Yeah, I have a few. Let's see. Yeah, the Apostrophe you mentioned by Zappa. I would have put on Yellow Snow, but it would have to be the whole thing with all the different parts, St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast and all the rest. And it was just too long. And I could nothing else really I wanted to pull out individually. This is one I was surprised. I thought you might do, Dave, which is Gordon Lightfoot. Sundown and Carefree Highway and some other songs. I remember that from the radio back then. That was kind of my first introduction to him. Yeah, Ship of Fools you mentioned. But a couple that really, okay, so Jackson Browne, Late for the Sky,
That's a
which
great one. Yeah.
great record. And there I have at least 3-4 songs from that. And what I was looking back, I was like, I really should have put something on there because there are so many overlaps between these bands. You have the Eagles, Linda Ronstadt, Dan Fogelberg, and Joe Walsh. They all kind of were on each other's records. The kind of the backing vocals on Late in the Sky are most of the Eagles and Dan Fogelberg. And I was just like, and then Warren Zevon's in there somewhere. I don't think he put out a record this year, but he was involved with this whole crew, particularly Jackson Browne. So yeah, that's one I kind of regretted.
How about Joni Mitchell with Court and Spark?
Court and Spark. I was just about to say it just popped out. I'm looking at my playlist. Yeah, Court and Spark. That was my first introduction to her. Court and Spark, Free Man in Paris. That Help Me I'm Falling, whatever that song is. I got a lot of airplay. That's not the right name of it. And you mentioned Neil Young, On the Beach, which was one I got into way later, probably after we'd all kind of gone our separate ways after college. I really got into that record. And longer songs, I couldn't quite find a place for something. One more here. What was it?
Well, there was Yes put out an album, but all of them are 8 minutes long.
Yeah, I saw that Relayer, right?
Yeah.
No one's playing anything off Relayer.
I mentioned George Harrison, but also Ringo Starr and John Lennon both put out albums and didn't even close to as good of songs as George Harrison. What's
Walls and Bridges? I wasn't familiar with that.
I would have gotten in trouble if I would have put on the song that I would have put on, but it would have gone great with Counting Out Time.
Well, it did have Number 9 Dream, which is a Lennon song I really like. REM covered it for a benefit thing. I had that record. I have a soft place in my heart for it, but I think it was during the Lost Weekend period. And so his quality, as well as all the other artists, Harry Nilsson and the others who were involved in that period of debauchery, quality went down quite a bit. And then the only other one, well, there's a bunch more. Stevie Wonder had a great one. But then this one I'm really surprised, and I'm sure several of these songs have gone on playlists earlier, was Supertramp, Crime of the Century. And it's like I really wanted to put something on by them, and I guess I could put it on but after what was it, the prison song, but yeah, it didn't really fit. But there's so many. I love every song on that record, even Bloody Well Right, which got a lot of play, and Dreamer, which got a lot of play on the radio. I still love them all. So
I started compiling, trying to go back, and I couldn't quite figure it out. But looking at the 509 songs we've done, I'm sure there were quite a few of them that were from 1974. We already mentioned the Lamb Lies Down, so you had, we've done In the Cage, the Lamia, Riding the Scree, Deep Purple's Burn, that was from 74. You mentioned Bad Company, Shooting Star, King Crimson, Red, Gordon Lightfoot, Circle of Steel, a song I put on. The Night Chicago Died, Paper Lace, that was big in 74. So I'm sure if I went back through the 509 songs, I'd probably come up with several others that were released in 1974.
Oh yeah, no, plenty of to pick from for sure. I guess we'll have to wait till 2034 to do.
Oh, and then the one regret, again, it's like a Cat Stevens kind of thing. I mean, it's like a Cats in the Cradle thing. I know it's kind of a smoozy song, but Terry Jacks, Seasons in the Sun,
I know.
one of my favorites. I played that song to death. I learned every line in that and sang it in my bedroom as a little 9-10-year-old,
Man,
Well,
that
we were
song
taking
haunted
bets.
me as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, we
I
were
was
taking
like
bets that you would put that on there. We're like,
If
he's
I-
gonna put that on.
If I didn't do the streak, that was probably the one that was going to end the playlist.
Oh man. I don't
Yeah.
know. The streak was, at least we ended on an up note.
That's hilarious. And the number one song of that year happened to be the song that came out in 73, which was Barbra Streisand's The Way,
Way
We
We
Were, which is
Were.
weird. So
Yeah, there were a number of songs that were big that I would love to have put on, but they weren't put out that year. Like the previous Stevie Wonder album, Inner Visions, is, and other than Songs in the Key of Life, I think is his best record. It has so many, Living for the City, and so many great songs on it. But no, it was songs were still on the chart from that in 74, but they weren't from 74.
Same with Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, I think.
Yeah.
And the Wings, we mentioned the Wings
Oh,
one,
yeah.
Hand on the Run, those
Yeah.
were 73, but they really became popular in 74. So yeah.
well, we'll hit it up 75, I guess, the next time around, or maybe 85.
Yeah, we can do any number of things. We don't necessarily have to do, we could just go, hey, let's do all 1969 songs or something,
That's true.
but yeah, 73, it would have been nice if we thought of it back then, because that's even a bigger year for stuff we like, but whatever. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and looking forward to the next one. I appreciate everything you guys added. Learned one new song here, and I'm gonna check out UFO some more. And then we got the delightful send off at the end from Dave, and 2 songs I guess I couldn't really drive around with the windows down. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I appreciate it, and I guess we'll see everybody next time.